I'm not ashamed.
Is it fair that the laborers hired at the end of the day were paid the same wage as those hired at the beginning of the day? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Matthew on walking through the Bible.
Of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Matthew chapter 20. We're going to be reading from verses 8 to 16. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Matthew chapter 20, beginning at verse 8. So when evening had come, the owner of the vineyard said to his steward, "Call the laborers and give them their wages, beginning with the last to the first." And when those came who were hired about the 11th hour, they each received a denarius. But when the first came, they supposed that they would receive more, and they likewise received each a denarius. And when they had received it, they complained against the landowners, saying, "These last men have worked only 1 hour, and you made them equal to us, who have borne the burden and the heat of the day." But he answered one of them and said, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go your way. I wish to give to this last man the same as you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? Or is your eye evil because I am good? So the last will be first and the first last, for many are called, but few are chosen." This is the conclusion of the parable of the laborers in the vineyard. This parable is exclusive to Matthew and was actually told in the context at the end of chapter 19, where Jesus said the first shall be last and the last shall be first. That statement was said in response to Peter's question of what the disciples would receive for leaving all and following him. In case you missed the last episode, which is lesson 96 of this series, the parable begins with a landowner hiring laborers to harvest the grapes in his vineyard. Early in the morning, the landowner went out and agreed to pay the laborers a denarius for a day's work, a denarius being the standard day's wage for a common laborer. They agreed and went out and started to work. Now this landowner must have had a large vineyard, because the landowner went out 4 more times during the day to hire laborers. With each of his subsequent hires, he agreed to pay them what was right, thus not agreeing to a specific amount, an important point that we'll get to in a few moments. In today's reading, we get what happened at the end of the day. Now, in most of today's labor force, you're not paid at the end of each day. Some employers pay weekly, some pay bi-weekly, others pay monthly. That's because you have been hired for continuous service with the company. That was not so with the people in this parable. They were day laborers who might not do the same job the next day, so they were paid at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, the landowner told his steward to call in the laborers and give them their wages. He told the steward to begin not with those who were hired first, but those who were hired last. When those who were hired at 5 o'clock, the 11th hour, came up, they received a denarius. Even though we're not told, it appears that those hired at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 3 p.m. also were paid a denarius. Then it came to those who were hired early in the day. They saw what those who worked only an hour had received, and so they thought that they would receive more. But no, they too received a denarius. They thus complained to the master that they had labored all day and suffered in the heat of the day, but the landowner paid those who worked only an hour the same wage. To us today, this would seem unfair, for that would be like paying someone at a rate of $112 an hour who worked for 1 hour, while paying someone who worked 8 hours at a rate of $14 an hour. They both received the same amount of money, but one did significantly more work. Did the master say, "Oh no, you're right. You deserve 12 denarii for working presumably 12 hours. No, he said that he had done them no wrong, but he had done what was fair because they agreed to work for 1 denarii, and they received what they agreed to. He told them that it was his money, and if he chose to give the same wage to everybody, that was his choice, and there would be no arguing about it. What was the lesson that Jesus was teaching? The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Peter had asked Jesus in chapter 19 what the apostles would receive for being the first to follow Jesus. He obviously expected a greater reward in heaven because he had served Jesus longer. But no, his reward would be eternal life, the same reward as those who would come later. The fact that Jesus didn't give the apostles a greater reward doesn't make Jesus unfair, for Jesus is the one giving the reward, and thus he could give out the reward as he sees fit. That doesn't mean that Jesus doesn't appreciate the work we do in serving him for many years of our lives, nor does it teach us to wait until late in life to begin serving him, for we're never guaranteed tomorrow. The reward for serving Jesus faithfully in this life is eternal life in heaven. That's the agreed upon reward. The reward is extremely generous, considering our sinful state beforehand, and so we should accept that reward and not become bitter or look down on others who become Christians later on in life, yet receive the same reward. This passage ends with many are called, but few are chosen. Some manuscripts do not have this phrase, and I'll admit that it does seem out of place when it comes to this parable, but it is found in chapter 22, so it is ultimately a teaching of Jesus, stating that many will hear the gospel call, but not all will heed that call or live faithfully unto death. A warning to us all. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's question and answer edition, seeking to answer the question, what is wrong with the sponsoring church arrangement? The Lord willing, on Monday, we will return to our study of Matthew, covering Matthew chapter 20, verses 17 to 19, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
Of his cross.